Welcome to the Isle of Wight, and in particular to this field, which has turned up a real archaeological mystery. 2 years ago they were putting a water pipe through here and a previously unknown Roman site was discovered. There wasn't much time for investigation, but they did catch glimpses of at least one wall, evidence of Roman metalworking, and literally hundreds of finds. And most intriguing of all was this slab of Italian marble with marks on it here, which indicate that it may have been attached to a high-status building. But was it? And if so, was the high-status building in this field? The islanders are really excited about it and want Time Team to solve the mystery. And as usual, we've got just 3 days to come up with some answers. You can't find the pipe, can you? We've got global positioning by satellite.
We've got
you're desperate.
We've got eyeballs as well, Tony, the most reliable technology known to man.
Oh, so you've got pictures of it anyway, yeah.
And what we can do from these pictures is work out where it is. If you turn around this way,
yeah,
you can see the line of the trench coming down here on this photograph. Well, it heads straight towards that traffic sign which is still there with the triangular sign on the top of it. So we know its alignment that way. If you turn the other way and the photograph taking the other direction, and there's the line of the trench going up there. You can see how it's heading straight towards where the main road cuts the skyline, where that tall tree is, which is up there. So basically all we have to do is get on line between that and that,
yes, yeah.
And then Henry can set out the coordinates that Kevin provided.
Archaeologist Kevin Trott discovered this site when the pipeline was laid. Are you confident you know where it is?
Positively.
Right, we'll come back in an hour's time. The pipe apparently is plastic, which means we're not expecting it to show up on the geophys survey.
Ruth, how many people were field walking here yesterday?
153.
You've got loads here today as well. The Isle of Wight Archaeology Unit have organised a field walking and metal detecting survey of this huge field. They started work yesterday so as not to get in our way.
And we're doing a systematic surface collection of the finds, and we're plotting out where they are in the hope that distribution will tell us what's going on.
Yep.
How have they done so far?
Well, they've done very well so far, and we've got a nice picture developing. Roman pottery has been found in every grid square that's been walked by the field walking team so far.
So when we've got this little 13 here?
Well, that means 13 sherds of Roman pottery have been found in that square.
20 in this one?
Yes.
That's really rather good, isn't it?
It's very encouraging.
Yeah.
And what about these red dots?
Those ones in red are the coins, yes.
What's that one, Ruth?
Oh, well, that's the latest one that we've handed in.
It's well preserved, isn't it?
It's very nice.
Yes, it's very good. I think metal survives very well in this field, actually.
All the field walking finds are being brought to our base here at the Dinosaur Centre just a mile away, and where our Roman finds expert, Guy de la Bedouillère, is having a close look at the coin.
Yep, we've got it up on the screen. We've got some lovely detail here, the legend all the way around the edge. We've got the first part of the emperor's name there, Domitian, and you can see a nice portrait of him here. He's got thick bull neck, curly hair, laurel wreath, and this rather ugly face, which is appropriate because he was a man who enjoyed killing flies for a hobby.
What, rather than Romans or as well as?
No, I think he did that as well, yes, that's right. Not a very nice man, but there is a nice historical tie-in for us because it was his father, the Emperor Vespasian, who invaded Britain, part of the invading force earlier in his career, and he is specifically recorded by the Roman historian Suetonius as having invaded and captured the Isle of Wight.
This coin was minted in Rome in the year 87 AD. And as it's not very worn, Guy suspects it was lost within 20 years, sometime in the early part of the 2nd century AD. You've had your hour, have you found it?
Well, we reckon we have, Tony. This plan here, this is Kevin's excavation along the pipeline, and according to our calculations, we must be standing about there.
So what would you like our first target to be then, Kevin?
My first target would be this core area here, so we can extend this area further back in order to encounter this cobbled area where we had that slab of marble from.
OK, so if we start in that area and then we can see what geophys comes up with and then extend out from that.
This is the test of knowing where we are. The main thing is to re-find the pipeline, and then everything else should fall into place. Right, that in.
Okay.
Let's dig a hole.
I'll do you.
Yeah.
The archaeologists want to relocate Kevin's trench because it not only turned up lots of Roman material, but also evidence of the earlier Iron Age. They're interested in the transition between the two periods. Personally, I'm just hoping we can solve the puzzle of what was going on here in Roman times, when the island was known as Vectis. We know that when the Romans invaded, the British tribes were like this.
Well,
I was going to say, so which one owned the Isle of Wight? But what does mean?
Well, I don't believe this round my area, and I suspect you probably feel the same.
It's typical of us. We love black and white areas, neat little dotted lines to show things. It wasn't like that at all. These tribes are fighting all the time. The borders shifted the whole time. It's actually one of these fellows, Verica of the Atrebates, who goes fleeing over to the continent in the year 42 to get help from the Romans in part of his tribal quarrels, and that's why Claudius comes and invades Britain the next year. But a coin of him turns up, this one here that we've got. It's this coin, is found in the Isle of Wight. And maybe his tribe held the Isle of Wight, but maybe it was this one and maybe it was that one.
And it might have been a different one at different times,
Yeah, absolutely.
presumably.
I always think of the Isle of Wight now as the tourist trade, but presumably it wasn't that during Roman times.
No, and there'd been people farming here, I think, for thousands and thousands of years before the Romans.
There are hunter-gatherers from the Mesolithic, and then there's farmers from 4000 BC, so it's been occupied for a very long time, but presumably just by farmers mainly.
But it's important enough for this Roman author to describe Vespasian as a general, he's later an emperor, actually to conquer the Isle of Wight. He talks about 30 battles, 20 towns, and the island of Vectis near Britain. So it's specifically mentioned. It must have been quite important.
Back to the field, and would you believe it, we're having problems relocating Kevin's old trench. How's this possible? Weren't they using GPS 2 years ago?
They would have been, and they did at this site, but the difficulty there is that when they were using it, it was before the Americans switched off. There's an inbuilt scrambling error, which has now been turned off, but it meant that there was quite a large sort of margin of error potentially in what they were doing.
To make matters worse, it started to rain. We're losing a lot of time, and Kevin looks like he's only too aware of it. Bring back the days of good old-fashioned measuring tapes, that's what I say.
It's approximately down through here.
I still don't know where we are on this site. It started off as a bit of a joke, but it's 10 to 1 now, and we can't do any digging until we've found it. Well, at least we've got the pipe, we think. It starts somewhere around there on one side, and the other side of it's about there. But we don't know how far up or down we are on it. And until we know that, we won't know where the original trenches that were dug 2 years ago are. Now, in those original trenches, there were some cobbles. If we can find the cobbles, then we'll know where we are. So what Phil's doing now is working up the length of the pipe to see if he can find me. He hasn't found any yet. Worse news still is that geophys are struggling to get good results here. But Carenza is opening up a second trench to check out one of the few signals that just might be archaeology. Meanwhile, in Phil's trench, we're now at least certain about one thing.
Have you found that pipe yet, Phil?
We most certainly have, Stuart.
Oh, good man.
If ever you needed any proof,
What does it say on it?
it says caution sewer below.
I believe you then. Any evidence of the archaeology then, Phil?
Nothing at all. So what we do is...
Phil's exposed this surface, which has got caterpillar tracks across it from the old dig. His plan now is to dig a small slot into it to see what's underneath. 20 minutes later, and Phil and Kevin have got something to smile about at last.
Right, what have we got then?
Well, it looks like we've actually finally got something.
Superb.
And look what we've come down onto, this vast spread of shells. Look, everywhere you look. And then there's burnt material, there's pot, more pot over there. And look what else has cropped up.
Ah, excellent.
Gorgeous,
really,
isn't it?
really nice glass bead.
Only archaeologists would call this a bead. It's apparently quite a rare find, though. It was made in France and could be Iron Age or Roman, made any time between 150 BC and 250 AD. We still desperately need to work out where we are in relation to the archaeology Kevin recorded, and who else should come to the rescue but Stuart.
How can you drag us away
You
from
might-
a good trench?
You might want to look at this, going back to real old-fashioned detective work, Phil, but it seems this is a photograph that shows the surfaces you're looking for. What I've done is tried to recreate where the photograph is taken from. And this tree line up here hasn't actually changed. You can get that frame exactly from here with a 28mm lens on, and we know the Patrick, who took the original shot, has a 28mm lens for the camera.
Okay.
So that shot was actually taken from here, looking down there.
Right.
Well, if you look at this sondage is going to be right down there, not over there.
Using Jenny as a human ranging pole, Stuart works out exactly where the Roman cobbled surface should be.
Keep going, keep going. So she's stood
more or less in
front of where those cobbles are, so they're probably under this spoil.
Well, I'm going to say, I mean, another bucket width or two will resolve that.
Yeah. It's been slow going, but we're getting there. And just to remind ourselves that it's worth the effort, Guy and Carenza are looking at some of the Roman finds that Kevin discovered in the pipe trench.
Beautiful. Is that a necklace?
Well, we're not sure yet whether it's a small necklace or a large bracelet.
I suppose it could be round to go around an upper arm.
Yes, and it is indeed adjustable. But one of the most interesting objects we've had off the site so far is this iron steel yard.
What would that have been used for?
Well, it's for hanging a weight off here, and then up and down here you move the substance that you want to weigh.
Does that suggest there's a trading post or something?
Well, interestingly, we've also got a couple of steel yard weights, but we also have this little suspension hook, bronze suspension hook, from another steel yard. So that does suggest to me that there is a trading or commercial activity going on here, and we have got a clue as to what that might have involved because we've got this large lump of molten glass.
I noticed that. That's really wonderful, isn't it? I mean, it looks as if there's a number of vessels that have been melted down and glued together, presumably for recycling.
Yes, glass is infinitely recyclable, and one of the things it could have been used for is enameling, which is a process we think might have been going on this site.
But the industrial finds are just part of the story, because intriguingly, Kevin's trench also turned up bits of marble.
So it could be the end of a piece of furniture, or perhaps a piece of stonework from the wall. But we're left with that mystery. Is there a building here, or has it come from a building somewhere else?
Discover the past with exclusive ancient history documentaries and ad-free podcasts presented by world-renowned historians from History Hit. Watch them on your smart TV or on the go with your mobile device. Download the app now to explore everything from the wonders of Pompeii to the rebellion of Boudica and the mysteries of prehistoric Scotland. Immerse yourself in the captivating stories of this remarkable era by signing up via the link in the description.
That's it.
Perfect.
That is absolutely perfect. It's a big old bit. It's that big old bit of pot.
Now, at last, it looks like we're in the right place to find out.
Yes, look at that.
Good God. Whoa.
New Forest greyware storage jar.
That's a big. That's a serious pot.
Oh yeah.
Jenny's opened up a new trench and reckons she's found the cause of one of the geophys signals.
I mean, that just looks like a big disc of iron. Could that be the anomaly?
It could be part of it, yeah.
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 The geophys signals aren't clear, although they have picked up the pipe trench, or rather a metal pipe that apparently runs next to the plastic one. This is the new geophys.
Well, yeah, this is the problem we've got. Look, there's the pipeline everyone was looking for. I mean, clear as daylight. But what we've got is not very clear beyond. That's the blob in Carenza's trench. And now that's where Jenny's digging. So there's no clear ditches or major pits. It's all very bitty. It's either because there's too much soil on top of the archaeology and we can't see deep enough, or it's the nature of the archaeological features. They're just not clear.
But we are finding material now in an area left intact because it was under Kevin's spoil heap.
I don't think it's.
What are you doing now?
No.
We have got the most gorgeous little bronze bracelet down in here.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, no, would I kid? Would I lie? Look at this. It's just so fragile because it keeps flexing, which is what bothering me. Well, I think. Oh, there it is. It's been all there, isn't it?
Oh, yes,
absolutely gorgeous, eh?
They're little terminal lends, aren't they? So
Yeah.
It wasn't open for them. Yeah.
Oh, so that's not broken? That's
No, that's the style it was.
Yeah, try and keep it.
It's it looks as if it's twisted wire, doesn't it?
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Is that one piece of wire bound round another piece.
Oh, it looks as if it might be, doesn't it? It needs cleaning up too.
It is, oh, look, you can see the hole in there, can't you?
Yeah, yeah.
It's intriguing. We've got items like this bronze bracelet, which dates to the 3rd or 4th century. I think we found the whole thing. While in the same trench, we're uncovering 1st century Roman pottery in what appears to be a rubbish tip full of shells. You can see them in this section here. There are so many, we're using sacks to collect samples. Carenza's trench is also full of shells and big shards of pottery called vectisware.
Well, vectisware is the local handmade pottery of the Isle of Wight between the late Iron Age and the early 4th century. And we have the material we have here is very early on in that tradition. We're talking about the latest Iron Age through to about 70 AD, but no later.
The light's starting to go, but there's just enough time for Stuart and Guy to get a look at our site from the hill.
You've got the coastline there, and that big expanse of flat ground that goes beyond the site in front of Brading over there. And then you see that flat expanse out there all the way out to the sea again at Bembridge Point. Now if you look at the geological map, that flat expanse of ground I referred to is this coming down here from coast to coast. This is all alluvium.
So all that low ground over there was originally sea?
It's been underwater at some stage, Effectively, this is an island off the island of the Isle of Wight.
Makes me wonder if this is actually where the Romans came in to invade and take the Isle of Wight in the first place.
You can't really take that in from... See, that's why you've got to get those trenches and get up high, Guy.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
It's turned out to be quite a good day in the end. We've found traces of people living here around the time of the beginning of Roman occupation, while just metres away we've got bronze bracelets and potentially a building dating to the end of the Roman period.
Well, that is a cracking edge down there.
And because Phil's found Kevin's old trench, we're now closer to discovering if it is a Roman villa. Day 2, and I'm bracing myself for another day on the Isle of Wight. We're digging just over that headland there because 2 years ago a local archaeologist discovered a whole host of Roman finds in a trench that was being dug for a water pipe. But when the water people wanted to close the trench and move on, he had to stop. And yesterday afternoon, after a really frustrating day, we finally rediscovered that trench. So we're hoping for lots of finds today. Although the pipe trench revealed evidence of Iron Age and Saxon occupation, the bulk of the material was Roman in date. The archaeologists, of course, are interested in all of it.
Vectisware.
But I'm intrigued by the Roman finds. I want to find out if there was a marble-clad villa here. Where is the bit that you actually found when you were digging last time?
We're actually standing in it at the present time. We're actually uncovering the area that I excavated. We're taking the loose out that I backfilled with.
And what was here?
Right, what we've got here, we've got a cobbled area just here.
Yeah.
Got lots of compact cobbles. In this area, roughly where I'm standing, we had a lot of rubble indicating possibly a wall overlying it. And this area here, the soil's extremely different. It's very, very mortary, so we could be inside the actual building here.
And where did you find the finds?
The bracelet was from this area here.
Ah, so that's very close to the one we had yesterday over here, isn't it?
It is, yes. Also the marble slab come from here as well.
Ah, right. So were the post holes with the Saxon material that way?
Certainly were. They were underneath the spoil heap behind me.
So really we need to go that way, presumably?
But surely also we've got to go uphill as well.
Oh, yes.
Right,
yes,
right.
both directions.
Well, get on with it.
Yeah. Oh, right. OK, Adam.
Kevin's finds also included lumps of recycled glass and lead. And this has prompted the idea that people may have been enameling brooches here. Brooches perhaps similar to these, which were all found on the Isle of Wight.
This one here is from the Anglo-Saxon cemetery in the middle of the island, and these two were found closer to our site in the east.
So what sort of date are they?
Well, even though this one here was found in the early Anglo-Saxon cemetery, they're actually all three Roman, hundreds of years earlier than the Anglo-Saxons.
So why do you think that one ended up an Anglo-Saxon grave? Do you think it was a family heirloom?
No, I don't think so. I think this one would have gone out of fashion in the 3rd century AD. I think it was probably just picked up, and it's a lovely little object, picked up and worn by an early Anglo-Saxon woman.
Well, nice to see they've got an appreciation for ancient artefacts. So
very little's known about how enameling was done in Roman Britain, so we've decided to try and make an exact copy of this brooch.
This is a hare, not a rabbit. We know that because rabbits weren't introduced until the Norman conquest, although it does look very rabbit-like.
Taking up the challenge are bronzesmith Andrew Lacey and local jeweller Guy Moray. Guy's first task has been to make a pattern from lead which will be used to create a mould.
The lead pattern's slightly bigger than the original guy.
Yeah, that's because when the metal cools it will shrink. So if you want it to be the right size, it has to be a little bit bigger. No, you won't. It's quite tough stuff, actually.
Guy's using cuttlefish bone for the mould.
Wow, so that's completely together now, all round. Then you just take it apart.
Take it apart. Open it.
Oh, it's amazing. Goodness, the detail's so good. You can see every little sort of line you've carved in.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
yeah.
And
Now
this is a technique the Romans would have used,
Yeah,
is it?
sure, it's very, very old.
How's the field walking going since yesterday?
It's going really well, thank you. We've actually field walked the entire field. As we've been going up the hill, though, there's been less material, so we're concentrating now on this area here. Your excavations are here, I think.
Intriguingly, the plot shows a concentration of 3rd and 4th century Roman material in the area of Kevin's Trench, while the rest of the field seems to be littered with 1st century Roman finds. As we're not getting a clear geophys picture on this site, Mick's suggesting that we place our next trench in one of the 20-metre squares that's turned up a lot of Roman pottery. Where'd you find that?
Found it just over there.
Clearly, there was also a lot going on here in the late Iron Age, just before the Roman invasion of 43 AD.
Brilliant. That's right.
Who got the Iron Age?
It's going to be something like that, isn't it? Coming out.
That's Verwood ware.
Carenza's Trench has turned up lots of late Iron Age material too.
It's getting very interesting. We've had masses of finds out of it, including tray loads of this oyster shell and some massive pottery as well, including bits like this that fit right back together again.
This trench has also revealed several large post holes alongside an area of cobbles.
We've got this bizarre spread of, well, boulders here, if you like, cobbles, with a very straight edge to them, straight edge up the top. There's something really deliberate going on here. But all these post holes are looking late Iron Age. That's what your pottery is, isn't it, Cassian?
Yep, everything out of here is all late Iron Age.
And that's all out of one post hole?
Yep, all out of one post hole.
And I've got a similar amount of material coming out of mine, same age.
So we seem to have late Iron Age settlement here, but we don't know what any of it is.
Do we know much about sort of Iron Age houses and so on in the Isle of Wight?
We know very little about the settlement in the Iron Age here at all. There's just a couple of Roman sites that have turned it up sort of almost by accident.
So it would make a lot of sense if we widen this, sort of took another chunk, wouldn't it, to see whether we can get the plan out of it.
In our extended pipe trench next door, we've just found a piece of another bronze bracelet.
Because this is what, just twisted wire?
It is, yeah, it's twisted totally round.
What's going on? That's the third one, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, Kevin had one from his evaluation trench there, and ours from yesterday just came in the bulk over there.
Yeah, let's have a look at it.
What, 2 strands?
Two strands, yeah, rotating.
All the bracelets are coming from the same context, buried in what Phil calls a lens of material.
This material here, this dark stuff, that's where all the bronzes are coming out of, the bracelets. And you can see it's coming back and back and back. And it's literally lensing out as you come up the slope. We extended the trench up the hill and we began to run out of finds. And so we went down and there's blatantly no building. What we're thinking now is that perhaps the wall that we thought was the front of the building is in fact the back wall of the building with a cobbled floor, and that it's actually extending down that way. So does that mean we've got to go down that way now? We've got to check it out, Mick.
In our workshop, our bronze mixture, made up of 90% copper, 7% tin and 3% lead, is ready to be poured into the cuttlefish moulds. We're hoping to get at least one decent replica Roman brooch to enamel tomorrow.
Oh, no!
Which means we can't afford to spill any. 5 minutes later, and it's clear the furnace wasn't hot enough. The bronze has solidified before reaching all parts of the mould.
Because it's only about 1 millimetre thick.
The solution? Add more tin to lower the melting point, allowing the liquid metal to fill out the tiniest details of our hair.
No idea what's happening.
That's fantastic.
Lovely.
Look at that. Through. So ears, eye, front paws, back paws.
Yep, we're just going to have to chisel those away.
Meanwhile, Stuart's fascinated by an engraving depicting the Isle of Wight.
Got this really nice engraving here, which was done in 1545, showing the view from Portsmouth towards the Isle of Wight over here, and there's the Mary Rose sinking it in the water there. But if you look at the Isle of Wight here, this is the entrance to what is now Bembridge Harbour, coming round here, and in fact you can see it shows boats right round the back of this. Our site is here, so even at that date, this was open water all the way round towards the back of the site.
Looking at the same view today, this whole area has been reclaimed, but it once formed a very big natural harbour. Our site is situated on what was effectively an island, separated from the rest of the Isle of Wight.
We're sort of like tucked up a little valley at the side, aren't
That's
we?
it. Well, that valley is actually quite interesting because that is the effect of creek coming off this main sheltered water site.
Stuart's starting to think that our site may have been situated here because of the creek, which, if it was deep enough, might have allowed ships to get very close. But what was happening here in Roman times? I'm simply staggered by the number of bronze items coming from just one trench.
We've got that bracelet there, which is totally complete, and then fragments, this bent one, and I suppose the nicest piece of all is this gorgeous pin. And you can actually see that there's incised decoration on the head of it. Beautiful.
Is this a common sort of find, Helen?
Well, a pin of that shape is not uncommon, but the engraving on the head is really unusual, yeah. And when you think that, of course, it wouldn't have been green when it was first used, it would have been a lovely bronzy colour, that delicate engraving would have stood out very well.
What do you think these finds tell us, Helen?
It's odd to have two complete ones and a load of broken ones. If these are in situ, maybe they've been cut up.
Yeah, people did buy in scrap in the Roman period. I've seen lots of broken bits of brooches or spoons all gathered up in one deposit. You could melt it down and recycle it. It's certainly something that could happen.
So this could be an industrial site.
I think that would fix. I mean, we appear to have good evidence for a building, and I mean, everything that's coming out of it is industrial.
But if it's not a villa, where does our piece of marble fit in?
I think there's a real possibility that it's stuff that may have been brought in from a ruin somewhere else to be reused. Remember, we're not very far away from a 4th century villa. I think it's quite possible that somebody was making use of a very valuable commodity, extremely rare in Roman Britain. You wouldn't throw that sort of stuff away.
So, no villa on our site. But Brading Villa is just a mile away, and it offers a chance to get an insight into Roman life here on the island in the 4th century AD. Oh, look at this, Mick.
Yes, it's impressive, isn't it?
It's exquisite.
Almost complete.
The mosaic shows what was important to the villa owner, like cereal farming and even dressing for the British climate. Is this supposed to be the sea?
Yeah. He's shown us his vision of his land and his holdings, and finally he's pointing out to us just how important the sea is to this villa and to himself. And we're told that it's a wild place because we're seeing these two big tritons, these big sea beasts with their great writhing tails. But then perched on the top, we've got these two nymphs looking quite serene and happy. So it's telling us that I think really that, or the owner here is telling us that the sea can be tamed. And just as a further reminder, this particular triton's carrying a shepherd's crook, rather sort of hinting, for instance, that he can shepherd the fleet across the waves and bring it safely to shore.
So would the sea have been quite wild here?
Well, it still is in the winter. The southwesterly winds here are a really significant thing. And it's interesting that we're also shown the winds, and capriciously they're pointing their big horns in different directions.
Oh, this is the four?
Yes. It's the best we're going to get for a snapshot, really, of what this place was like in the 4th century.
You see, it comes along.
Although I'm disappointed we haven't got a mosaic, in our 4th century Roman workshop, Phil's over the moon to show the extent of what we think was the cobbled floor area.
Are you following?
Yep.
Around here.
Yeah.
Back round here, and then this is going to be the front of the building.
Right.
It's going to give us a building of about 8 metres long. That's that way.
Yeah.
And about 5 metres from front to back.
Katie's trench, put in on the basis of field walking finds, has discovered a huge ditch full of late Iron Age and early Roman material.
We're finding loads of pieces of pottery as well. This is 1st century AD, so it's very early.
And that's a big piece. That means you're probably going to find a lot more to have a piece in that good condition.
And this has got a little hole under the rim there.
Oh, so it has.
So it would have been suspended over a fire.
And now we've got a new puzzle. Why is there this enormous ditch along the side of our settlement? Clearly, we've got two Roman stories on this site to deal with. One set around the time of the Roman invasion, So it could even and the other involving what appears to be a jewellery workshop operating towards the end of the Roman period.
That's a bit... Look what we've just found.
Oh my God. What's this little thing here?
No, that's the pin off it. If you turn it over...
Can I?
You see it's beautifully tinned on the back.
Yeah.
Where did this come from, Phil? It's all the same deposit.
Where the bracelets from as well.
Guys twitching.
Yeah.
It's a Roman disc brooch. What I think is really exciting there is that underneath all this crud, we've probably got the remains of the enamel decoration that would have filled these grooves around the edge.
Oh, that's very appropriate, isn't it?
Yes, it does, yes. Yeah.
Our attempt at enamelling will take place tomorrow. But first, we have to create some glass using silver sand and soda lime.
A little bit of this.
Some of that, a little bit
Some
of
of that, a little bit of this.
In this case, malachite, a copper mineral, will colour it.
Have you done this before?
Not quite like this.
So you really don't know if this is going to work?
No. So we've just got to let them cook for a while now.
Enamel is essentially made up of ground glass, so this has got to work.
Just at the treacle tart stage.
So this is one, like, leave it overnight, maybe. Yeah, if we put the lid on just for a little bit.
Almost the end of day 2. Just time to check progress on our Roman building.
We've got lots and lots of really complicated layers of dumps and pits, and it's absolutely stuffed full of things.
Cool. Oh, roof tile.
Yeah. This is our first
That's
bit
new, isn't it?
of what looks like a building, building with a big roof here. And then we've got lots and lots of shellfish. We've got oysters, we've got whelks, we've got cockles, there are some limpets in there. And then we've got lots and lots of pottery too, all Roman and nails, all sorts of things.
Caroline, what's down your end?
Well, basically we've got all of this stuff that Jenny's been describing is laying over this wall here. If you see this line of stones, basically we've got a wall.
So we've got a wall. What does Guy make of it all now?
Well, what we haven't got is a load of lazy Romans idling around in a villa. What we've got is a much more thriving and exciting organic sort of settlement where people are cracking a living out of the landscape, they're taking in scrap. There's a whole mass of stuff going on here.
And amazing finds. It's extraordinary how the story on this site is changing from day to day. Yesterday I thought we might have a villa. Now we seem to have a high-class scrap metal merchant. And in about 1,000 years of activity. We've got Iron Age over here, we've got possibly a Roman structure over here, Saxon over there. What on earth's going on this site? Let's hope we find out tomorrow. Day 3. And although we're up to our necks in Iron Age and Roman archaeology in this field, for some reason it now looks like our experts are eyeing up the field next door. What are you exploring here? We're 100 metres away from where we're supposed to be.
But we've got nice earthworks up in the field, Tony. You see this platform across here?
Yeah. You can see on here, Tony, there's where the trenches are, and this is the pasture field we're talking about. And you can see these dark lines across here. These represent where this terrace and these platforms are. So quite clearly artificial features in earthworks. And it may be that we've got a settlement or occupation along this terrace above this creek here.
The plan is to dig a series of test pits, just to see if there's any sign of occupation in this field. Geophys have started work here too, as they've been getting much better results higher up, where the topsoil isn't as deep.
I mean, this is the pipeline coming through here. Right. And we were getting very little else. And then Katie and Kerry put a trench in yesterday, and they got 2 big ditches. And we've actually gone and surveyed around those now, and you can see the line of that one ditch clearly running through there, and then these outer ditches there.
Does this continue all around the hill?
Well, it could do, and presumably if you've got time you'll add.
Well, we're starting to track it now.
Right.
The big ditch discovered in Katie's trench seems to be part of the late Iron Age, early Roman story on this site.
Look at the size of it. I mean, it must be 6 metres across.
And that really is going all the way across here, isn't it?
Yeah, the ditch is actually cut through bedrock. It's going down in that direction, and then the geophys have actually picked it up curving round towards where Carenza's trench is. So it looks like it's actually surrounding something.
Up on the top of the hill?
Up on the top of the hill.
The big ditch hasn't got anything to do with the later 4th century Roman workshop we're excavating here. This is some trench now, Phil. Although we're already digging 2 different periods, this trench has been extended to find evidence of a much later Saxon building, which our experts believe may be the most important discovery of all. So far we found 2 post holes like this one, And yes, I'm struggling to see it too. How many Saxon buildings have been found on the Isle of Wight?
Well, this is it. One possible one so far. This is the second possible one.
100% increase in knowledge.
So in this trench, we're excavating a 4th century Roman workshop and a 5th century Saxon building. And now it looks like we've found another Roman bronze pin.
Oh, yeah,
Tell us what you can see, Helen.
Well, it's kind of blobby, a globular head, quite big. It's like a massively scaled up dressmaker's pin. Some of them have been found in graves up by the head, so it suggested they could be hairpins. They could be cloak pins as well. Wow.
Oh, look at that. Oh.
Yeah, lovely big round head.
Can I have a look, Phil?
Yeah. Look,
Yes,
there's
grooves near the head. Yeah.
Look, do you see there's grooves around the top there?
Oh yeah, you can see the marks on the end there. They're really spiralling up, aren't they? I tell you, this isn't a rubbish tip, mate. This is a villa.
The rest of it doesn't add up to a villa.
In our Roman workshop, today's the day when we try to enamel our Roman brooch, and for that we need some newly created coloured glass.
Let's grab this one. Hey, look at that. You see the copper on the surface there?
What, the pinkish stuff?
Yeah, the pinkish is bright
That's
pink.
copper metal?
Yeah.
That's just appeared spontaneously.
That's it.
Is that a good sign or a bad sign?
That's a strange sign. That's not necessarily what we want. See how this is green on the underside?
That's actually the glass from the pot coming through the cracks.
That's it. It's just leaked all the way in there.
That's a nice greenish colour, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So how do we get it out?
Oh! It's not quite as glassy as we hoped, is it? Best bit's leaked out, isn't it?
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
That's the most beautiful colour.
This is very much a question of trial and error. We don't know quite how these colours will change once they're heated again. Adding cobalt to our blue glass should give us a deeper colour.
How's that, Andrew?
Sort of get that out.
Guy is finishing off the actual bronze brooch by trimming off the waste metal and drilling the hole for the pin, using a type of drill used in Roman times. Meanwhile, the floor of our workshop has turned up another tool in use here 1700 years ago.
We have a small bill hook, socketed bill hook, a very small example. It's either been used for cutting fuel for any furnaces they had, for the making of enamel or whatever. But it's a remarkably small one. They're usually bigger than that.
And would this be Roman?
Oh yes.
What else you got?
Right, the other thing I've got, what every humble abode should have, however humble, a door handle.
Roman
broken,
again?
Yes, broken, but you can see where it's broken, snapped away on a rivet hole, and there's another traces of another rivet about there.
It looks just like something you might have today, doesn't it?
It is. Once you get a good design, it sticks.
So how do you know that that isn't contemporary?
Well, it's been sealed. It's sealed in the layer. There's no chance of it coming in from above.
Right. What kind of people do you think might have been working here?
They could have been slaves. Could easily have been slaves, perhaps owned by the family that had Brading Villa. And this had been part of the economy of such an estate.
After taking soil samples in the creek, we've proved that it was deep enough for ships to get very close to our site, especially flat-bottomed cargo ships like this model based on a wreck found in the River Thames. Unfortunately, our test trenches have failed to find any trace of occupation here, nearer to the creek, although the evidence may have been lost because we've now been told that the slope was bulldozed after the war. Geophys, though, have detected something on top of the hill, and we've put in a trench to see if it's Roman or Iron Age.
Well, there's the ring for you.
Well, that's pretty clear, isn't it?
And, I mean, on the interpretation, we're putting the box in there, on that part of the ark.
Yeah.
And if you can't see it on the ground...
It's clear enough in the trench, isn't it? Yeah.
Katie's found a flint scraper in the ditch, which is either Neolithic or Bronze Age.
Bit of a blade, isn't it? Must be Bronze Age. Well, we'd expect it to be Bronze Age, wouldn't we?
What would you expect to be Bronze Age?
We'd expect it to be a ring ditch, probably around a barrow or around burials.
Mick reckons this could have been a Bronze Age burial mound, which means that we're now talking about people living in this landscape as far back as 2000 BC. It's an exciting discovery, and we now know it's got nothing to do with the big ditch and the late Iron Age settlement Carenza's digging, which was occupied something like 2,000 years later. Carenza?
Oh, hi there.
Have we got a structure yet?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we've got a structure. We've had more of these post holes turn up in the extension of the trench. You can see where we've half-sectioned them, and some of them are really different to others, like that one's quite shallow and V-shaped. Whereas this one here is much, much deeper and sort of U-shaped. So it looks like this might be part of the wall of a roundhouse, and some of the other ones are sort of internal features like little partitions or beds or something like that.
Carenza's especially impressed by one of the smallest finds.
We found this glass bead out of the post hole, right in the middle of it, and that's perfectly fine for the Iron Age. You hold it up the light, it's the most beautiful deep blue colour. And having been struggling for the last day to try and make anything remotely glassy, I am so impressed with that as a piece of craftsmanship.
To find out more about the massive Iron Age ditch, we've opened up one last evaluation trench, and it's revealed something quite unexpected.
We certainly found a human burial for a start.
A human burial?
Human remains, certainly, yes.
Where?
I mean, it's here, basically. When they were taking the top off the trench, they just touched it with the bucket. This is all cranial fragments up here and actually some bits of hand. And we have a mastoid process with a zygomatic. Actually looks it's a very male characteristic. And a bit of mandible here. It's very square, also looks quite male, so we may well have ourselves a man.
It's incredibly shallow, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably been damaged a lot by the plough.
Well, I was going to say, it's within the plough zone, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very shallow.
Can we see which orientation it is?
Well, at the moment, I think it's actually running this way from what I'm actually seeing, but I'm trying to define if there's an actual cut. I mean, maybe there isn't, because I think this, in theory, is supposedly in the ditch fill of the ditch that's over there.
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
Maybe they just put it on the top.
So we've got a huge ditch going in this direction.
Well, coming right across there, in fact, the ditch is.
And then suddenly somebody pops a body into it.
Into the top, yeah.
The burial is so near the surface that it makes me wonder if we've discovered a modern-day murder, although there is less topsoil in this part of the field. Carenza, like everyone else, is intrigued by the new discovery.
Caroline, did I hear that the hands in your burial are up near the head?
I mean, it's disarticulated, but we basically find hand bones, yes, up around where the cranium is here.
Right, is that part of a bent arm bone?
This potentially could be, yeah, a flexed humerus and an elbow basically joined here.
So that suggests that it might have been a crouched burial then, with the sort of hat tied up tightly like this.
It's distinctly possible.
And that would suggest it's likely to be prehistoric, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know what Saxon burials usually look like.
Well, no, they're generally sort of lying on their back, their hands sort of either up like this or down like that, not crouched up like that. That's more likely to be prehistoric.
Which would be good news, because then that could help us date our ditch fill, because that would be overlying our ditch fill.
That would tell us that the ditch was actually filled up in the prehistoric period.
Carenza has to rush off again because she doesn't want to miss the critical stage in our enameling experiment.
How long is it going to take?
30 seconds to a minute, maybe.
Oh, right, so you can just sit and literally watch it go?
Yeah, just watch it. It will darken and then become glossy.
It's tricky because the different colours have to be added in stages, some colours requiring longer in the furnace than others.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Look at that. That still needs a bit more to go glassy, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's the first firing.
It's getting late, but having discovered this burial, we're committed to fully excavating it, which probably means that Caroline will continue tomorrow after we've gone.
The bone's actually in quite good shape, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit soft.
For the time being, though, we're going to leave her to get on with it so that we can find out as much as we can by the end of the day. In Carenza's trench, we now have a hearth to go with our post holes and feel pretty sure that what we've found is the remains of an Iron Age roundhouse, a building that probably looks similar to this, part of an extensive settlement here around the time of the Roman invasion in 43 AD. We expected the big ditch to completely enclose the late Iron Age settlement, but Geophys could only see this much of it. Perhaps this was all there was, and it was designed to impress anyone approaching the settlement from the creek. The Roman building that was standing here 200 years later, around 300 AD, was a fairly humble structure, not the villa I'd hoped for, but probably a workshop, perhaps even occupied by slaves. One perhaps of several buildings located here because of easy access to the sea, with people trading and recycling materials, and almost certainly into the business of enameling.
Oh. Andrew, are you pleased with it?
Oh, I'm so chuffed with it.
That's great.
I mean, yesterday you were very complimentary about the craftsmanship of the Romans, and I suppose I'd better be complimentary about your work now as well.
Oh, look at that.
Hey!
Isn't that beautiful? That's unbelievable. The colours are just so bright, aren't they?
That is 15 out of 10.
It's turned out brilliantly, and it makes me appreciate how good the other bronze finds must have looked when new. Our experts, meanwhile, are delighted to have found rare evidence of Saxon buildings standing here approximately 100 years after the Roman workshop.
What we've done is we've uncovered the original post holes that are excavated in the evaluation. I had 2 more in this area here. Unfortunately, we actually machined them away a bit too deep.
Yeah.
Right up here, we've uncovered another post hole associated with the line. It's much shallower and smaller than the others. Helen, we've got more post holes just about a metre away, haven't we?
Yes, very observant. These two. So this is the edge of Kevin's trench. So these two weren't within it, and they seem to be much bigger. So there's those two, and then there's a third down here, and you can see they're all quite big and they're all deep. They're much bigger than these ephemeral things up here.
And what's that here?
What we got here is some Roman pottery and occupation debris. What's actually happened, it's come down the big hill wash and congregated in a hollow here.
So how come it's on top of the Saxon holes when the Saxons were later?
Well, what it is, originally the whole of this area was covered in Roman debris, and what they've done is they've cut through with the post holes through this earlier phase.
Why were the Saxons living on top of Roman squalor?
Well, there wasn't really anywhere else to go. At the end of the Roman Empire, there's just Roman squalor everywhere. The whole landscape's littered with buildings and coins. They were just going where it's a good place to live, or staying where there's a good place to live.
It's very difficult to understand quite what sort of building this would have looked like. I mean, is that what you got Victor doing here?
Yes, we've got the complete buildings here. This one is what we think the 5th century small post holes, small building might have been like. And then this one combines the great big posts here of the later house and the raking posts that Kevin had in previous excavations, and shows how the two could go into the same building.
So what would you say is the story of what happened in this trench from the Roman times onwards?
Well, it looks like a perfect microcosm of what happens when Roman Britain ends and Anglo-Saxon England begins, because we've got a timber building that goes out of use in the early 4th century, and then that's replaced by this timber building from the 5th century, and that falls down in its turn and is replaced by our later, maybe 7th century building here. So here are the people of the Isle of Wight. They live like Romans here, they live like Anglo-Saxons here.
Before the pipe trench was put in, no one had any idea that any of this was here. And the biggest surprise has been the body on top of the ditch. Caroline, can we date the skeleton yet?
Well, we've had a few very small pieces of pottery out that's actually been inside, basically, in the burial, under bits of bone. And we've had a word with Malcolm, and he said it's potentially late Iron Age. So this is potentially late Iron Age or later.
And what's the story of the skeleton?
Well, we've been revealing it, Jenny and I, and what we've found here is these fantastic kind of hyper-flexed arms basically over the chest here, suggesting that it's either been bound or something it's been purposefully placed in this position.
It's quite a surprise. It's not what we were expecting, is it?
We certainly weren't, Tony.
How many other Iron Age burials have we got on the island?
We only have one, and if this is Iron Age, this is very, very important.
A radiocarbon date obtained for these bones dates them to the 1st century BC, which means that this man died in the late Iron Age. But given the suspicious circumstances, Victor and I both like one idea that's been suggested. Was this someone who had his hands tied because he was a prisoner? Someone who was executed and then dumped into a ditch full of Iron Age rubbish? It's got to be a possibility.